welcome. It's 6:33 on a sunny Monday, June 2nd, 2025. I will call this meeting of the Waterbury Selectboard to order. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion with regards to the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Kane, second by Roger on the agenda. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Tom, waiting room, please. Okay, agenda is approved as presented. That brings us to our next item, which is the consent agenda items. We have several this week. We have approving the minutes of our last regular select board meeting on May 19th. We have the approval of the special events permit and road closure for Not Quite Independence Day, which we heard about last week. That special events permit was posted along with the materials for this meeting. We have a second class license for the Cabot Annex, second class liquor license, a special events permit for Smuggler's Notch Distillery for Father's Day cocktails. We have a special events permit again for them for cocktails. We have a special events permit, a third one, all of their special events permits, so they're all submitted ahead of time. Let's see, cater permit for Bear Ridge Productions, first class restaurant / bar license for Butler's Sweet or Zachary's Pizza, and then also the approval of the special events permit for Music in the Alley. Again, we approved the liquor permit for that at our last meeting, but this was the accompanying event to approve it. Is there, which was also posted, a motion with regards to the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I can't second this because there's a potential conflict of interest with the Turn Music in that Vitalizing Waterbury is involved with that event. So,
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, if we could
Alyssa, I cannot second because of NQID, so could we take NQID and the alleyway out of the consent agenda? Sorry, I should have done it when we approved.
No, all good. So I'm hearing that, which select board members can do without a motion, that they would like to remove B and J from the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Yeah. And then with those removals, I will second the motion to approve the now amended consent agenda.
Okay. So motion by Kane to approve the consent agenda, again, as posted, less items B and J, seconded by Tori. Further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Right. And then that leaves our next item. We have the road closure for NQID, approval of special event permit. Roger?
I'll move to approve the road closure for the NQID special event permit.
Second.
Motion by Roger, second by Kane. Any further discussion?
I will be abstaining. Thank you.
Yep. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Tori is abstaining. Right, and then we had the special events permit for Turn Music in Jack's Alley from 6 to 9 on June 27th, July 25th, and August 15th.
I move to approve the event permit for Turn Music in Jack's Alley on June 27th, 25th.
I will second.
Okay, motion by Kane, second by Tori. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstaining? Roger will abstain. Awesome. That brings us through consent agenda. Thank you all. Next up, we have public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone who would like to comment on something that was not on the Warren Select Board agenda. We ask that you keep your remarks to under 5 minutes, and if we need more time, we can schedule you for a future agenda. Is there anyone who would like to speak on public comment? Lisa?
I was taking a look at the Municipal Code of Ethics and the Town of Waterbury Code of Conflict of Interest Policy. I'm just curious, Alyssa, I was hoping you could help me understand, and to make it easier, why don't I give you a
My
copy?
only question, we actually have this on the agenda
Yeah, but I
tonight?
thought it was
But, okay.
about, no, I just thought it was about this is the investigation and the enforcement, but this is actually about the policy itself, so I don't
Okay.
think it's completely congruent with that.
Yep.
So just to make it easier, I'll give you a copy too if you want, just to make it simpler. I know you've got your computer right there. So I'm just wondering, and because I'm not overly familiar with legalese, as you'll see on one of the pages, the state page, it says conflict of interest means a direct or indirect interest of a municipal officer, and jump down to that is in conflict with the proper discharge of the officer's duties. So I'm specifically looking at that line that I underlined, and I'm just curious, Alyssa, as to why that line was taken out and not included in the town of Waterbury conflict of interest policy.
I don't have a specific answer.
Okay, can we do a little better than that?
Sure, I'm just being upfront that we're at a public meeting. You've brought this to my attention on public comment and asked a question, and I don't off the top of my head right now have an answer as to why this clause that you're reflecting from the Municipal Code of Ethics is not in this policy.
I have,
Okay, thank you, Tom.
I think, a reasonable answer. If you read under the conflict of interest policy, section 1,
Mm-hmm.
what it does towards the end of that first sentence is it defines, I think, officer's duties. So the outcome of a cause, proceeding, application, or any other matter pending before the officer, before the public body in which he held office or employed. So I think our policy clarifies what the officer's duties are.
I'm sorry, where are you looking at that it,
So under in the town of Waterbury conflict of interest policy,
yep,
section E where you've highlighted, if you go to the fourth line down, which begins with employer or employee, after that comma, in the outcome of the cause, proceeding,
no,
application.
I'm sorry, I'm misunderstanding. On our, and I've only got the first page here that I'm looking
Yep,
at.
on our
But
policy,
is it still under the conflict of interest E or no?
E1.
E1, okay, great,
So if you
yes.
go to the fourth line down, which
Conflict
begins
of
with,
interest, yeah, does not arise in the case.
which you go to, let me just show you. So if you go there and read from there on out,
In the outcome of a cause, proceeding, application, or any other matter pending before the officer, before the public body in which they hold office or are employed.
yes, so I think in the state law, they generally say in conflict with proper discharge of the officer's duties. In our policy, I think we clarify that, what the officer's duties are and where they begin and end.
Well, that's true, but this one seems to suggest in the state one that it's in conflict, meaning that it interferes with or is incompatible with what the officer's responsibilities are. So I don't feel like it covers that exactly.
Well,
Because it's basically saying that the officer shouldn't be doing something or be involved in an interest that conflicts with the ability of them to do their job properly. And anyway, you don't have to, I'm just was trying to understand that, trying to compare the two. I know you spoke plenty of times and mentioned that our policy is more strict, but I think that's a really important line, and it's something that most people would understand, and it seems kind of vague in the other. But I understand that when we file a complaint, that we can use the state policy anyway, since that supersedes our policy. So it's not the end of the world, I just think that it's an important
I guess I
phrase.
argue the state policy is vague, not our policy.
In certain ways, it does seem like it's more vague, but
Yeah.
this particular line not being in it makes ours seem less strict somehow. So I thought I'd put that in there. Again, that's up to you guys, but when we file a complaint, we can use either one. So that's fine. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on public comment? Yes. Hello.
So it was about the local option tax policy that's in draft. I know I brought it up last time. I did ask for it to be on an agenda, that the public may want to be in more discussion of an allocation if it's not part of the capital expenditure or not part of mitigating increasing property taxes, or if it's not for a one-time project that's going to improve something for the community. I realize that it can't be on the agenda tonight. I didn't see it in the parking lot, so I didn't want it to get lost. So I'm bringing it up again.
Thank you.
I know the parking lot can get, kind of linger, like I know a few things that have just been sitting there for a long time, so I'd appreciate if we could, at some point, at least have it on an agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other folks who would like to speak on public comment, yes?
Evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's Mike Hedges. While on the Conservation Commission, I supported the town's purchase of a roadside mowing machine, and I appreciate that the town, people voted to do that. It's great that we have that so that we can do more timely mowings. And I wanted to just encourage the town to get out there as quickly as they can, as the invasive wild chervil is just about to go to seed out there right now. And if they can mow as much of the right-of-way as possible to get that before it leaps into people's private property, that would be great. And I did speak with Bill today, that they are getting out there, but those plants are ready to go right now.
And I think I know what they look like, but for public awareness, could you describe what invasive wild chervil looks like for anyone interested?
It's got a leaf that looks almost fern-like. It's got a very deep tap root. It's incredibly aggressive and will beat out other native species. But right now, there's a white blossom that looks something like Queen Anne's lace. And you'll see it on many roads quite wide and onto many fields at this point. So it's a cousin to the poison parsnip that's yellow, a little bit taller, and coming in a couple weeks, which there isn't so much of a problem here in the town. But they're both phototoxic. So if you get the juices on you and then you expose yourself to sun afterwards, you can burn or blister from these plant juices. So it's definitely stuff you don't want kids playing, that sort of thing. So if we can do, I know there are some neighborhoods, mine being one of those, where we're out digging them ahead of the cut so that you can get rid of that root and try to eliminate it. If you go on the roundabout, Waterbury roundabout, and search for wild chervil, I think you'll see an article in there. And of course, VT invasives is another great source to find out how to work with invasives.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else who would like to speak on public comment? Anyone online?
All right. Seeing none, I will move us on to our next item, which is just an update on the Stowe Street Bridge project. This is our last regular scheduled select board meeting before some of the work begins, so I just wanted to give Tom an opportunity to share any relevant updates for the community.
Just an update, I've got one taxi service lined up, probably a second one coming for the folks who don't have transportation of their own and need to get around that corridor for things like work and shopping. It's not we're taking you to Burlington taxi service, but it's specifically limited just to those folks that vitally need it, that are walkers and limited. And I'll put that out there well in advance of the project and probably hang some signs on the bridge itself before it goes out, just to make sure we capture those people.
And how do they access it, Tom?
They're gonna call.
Oh, here.
They'll call here. I don't anticipate it's a huge number of people, and perhaps after we get the ball rolling and we're into it for a few weeks, we can just be more direct, but I just wanna make sure they call here first to make sure people don't understand it's just a free tax. It's not a free tax, it's limited to folks that need it.
In general, in terms of updates about the project, I know there's a lovely blinking sign right downtown mentioning the change of the park and ride starting next Monday down to the state office complex. And we had the presentation from folks at V-Trans who are maintaining a separate website and email list for updates. How can folks find the info about that?
Best way is all through the QR codes that were presented through V-Trans.
And would it be possible for us to get that linked on the homepage of the website? Awesome. Any other questions, discussion, or update? And as far as you're aware, is the 18th still scheduled for the first day of construction?
16th,
16th, I mean, thank you.
that is correct.
Our next Monday meeting will be day 1, so we can check in further. Any other questions or updates on this? All right. With that, I will move us on to our next item, which is a resolution on the 200th anniversary of General Lafayette's visit to Waterbury. Knowing nothing about this myself, I will invite up our representatives from the Historical Society who have prepared something, including, I should name Cheryl Casey, who is our intrepid meeting secretary, but also a member of the Historical Society.
Cheryl has volunteered to read the resolution. I'm thankful because Marquise de Lafayette has such a long name when you get to the end of it.
It's a good thing I speak French. Okay, I can do it from here, right? I don't have to go over there.
Yeah, whatever you.
Okay. Whereas Vermont was the last official stop of the Marquis de Lafayette's triumphal tour of America in the 24 existing states in the Union on June 28th and 29th, 1825. And whereas Vermont citizens have volunteered with the support of the American Friends of Lafayette and the Lafayette 200 Committee to commemorate Lafayette's historic visit with events and reenactments in the towns he visited, including Windsor, Heartland, Woodstock, East Barnard, Royalton, Barry, Montpelier, Waterbury, Williston, and Burlington. And whereas in 1824-1825, Lafayette was the last living general of the American Revolution and had survived wounds at the Battle of Brandywine at age 20 and gone on to lead troops at the critical Battle of Yorktown. And whereas Lafayette was a lifelong champion of human rights, racial equality, religious liberty, women's rights, native rights, and actively worked for democratic ideals. And whereas Lafayette, with his son George Washington Lafayette and personal secretary Auguste Levasseur, toured Vermont with Governor Cornelius Van Ness and passed through Waterbury on the way to Burlington on June 29, 1825. And whereas Lafayette and his entourage reportedly stopped at the home of future Governor Ezra Butler on Main Street in Waterbury, where they were met by Butler and his daughter Fanny. And whereas Ezra Butler in 1825 served as chair of the Vermont House of Representatives Appropriations Committee, which had to approve all state government spending. And whereas Governor Van Ness had expended a substantial amount to finance the many expenses of the Lafayette Farewell Tour and planned to seek reimbursement from the House Appropriations Committee for his largesse. And whereas Lafayette's entourage passed by both the old Stagecoach Inn and the home of Postmaster Henry Fisk James, now part of the town municipal complex, to stop at the Butler House. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Waterbury, Vermont Selectboard does hereby applaud the wise decision of Governor Van Ness and General Lafayette to stop in Waterbury in 1825. And now, be it further resolved that Sunday, June 29, 2025, will be a day of remembrance to honor the memory of General Marie-Joseph Paul-Yves Roche Gilbert du Motier, the Marquis de Lafayette, and celebrate his historic visit by reenacting the Waterbury welcome at the Governor Ezra Butler House on Route 2 at 9:45 a.m. The public is invited and General Lafayette will be there. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Town of Waterbury Select Board that this resolution be spread upon the permanent records of the Town of Waterbury, and a copy of this resolution be presented to the Waterbury Historical Society and the Lafayette 200th Planning Committee, this day of June 2nd, 2025.
So not to have you just sign this blindly, this is a statewide celebration tour, and Lafayette toured America in 1824 and 1825. I think Waterbury was on the tail end of his trip. I don't know if we were last, but he went from Cornish, New Hampshire, came in at Windsor, and then traveled to Burlington. So they wanted to go to the capital, and then Waterbury was on the stop because it was the only road between Montpelier and Burlington. So that's how he came to stop here. And, you know, Governor Butler, he wasn't governor at the time, was the holder of the finances for Governor Van Ness, and followed Van Ness as the next governor. I put together a little handout here of a couple of pictures that Governor Butler is a very significant person in the history of Waterbury, that he was our second settler in 1785. He was born in Massachusetts. 1763, called Vermont's first town meeting, and he was our 9th governor, one of the first governor of one of 3 that were lived in Waterbury and are buried in Waterbury. He died in 1838 and is buried in Hope Cemetery, and the Stagecoach Inn referred to is the very Stagecoach Inn that's still, you know, there today. And his house, fortunately, is still standing. Chris Noyes owns it and has agreed to work with the Historical Society in preserving it and things, and has approved the event. You can see all the, what's that vine that grows all over everything on the porch? Jan General will be getting after that, so that will be gone. And then a picture from Lewis's history of Vermont there from 1915 of the house as it was back then. We had a 250th celebration of Ezra's birthday. That was at the top with Jack Carter dressed up as Governor Butler there. That's where I had a typo that said it's 2023 when it was actually 2013. And then the second handout is, you know, what was they expect to happen. They have an actor that's playing Lafayette that's going to give a little speech, impromptu. Some of the places have the real speech that Lafayette gave that they're going to be rereading, but we don't have any speech that, you know, if he did make one. So they're going to stop there, and Governor Butler and his daughter Fanny are going to greet them, and the actor is going to give a little speech, and we're going to have some appropriate libations that the public and the actors can share. And so it's going to be pretty short. They say 9:45. I don't think they're going to make 9:45 to get there because they got a pretty tight schedule. So you're all invited, and you know, if you, they requested that we do a resolution and things, and like I said, one for the Historical Society and the state convention, and I added that one would be in the permanent land record. So many times I have searched for documents that were talked about at a select board meeting, and then you go to find them and you can't find them. So the only safe place, I think, is to put things in the land records that then are permanently recorded, which is where we would have this. It's on vellum, and I'll have Karen use the Waterbury stamp after you've voted to sign it there. So any questions? You know, Cheryl's the co-chair of the event with the Historical Society, so you're welcome, and bring your period dress and, you know, your tankard.
Are there appropriate lawn games as well, if it's a nice day?
Lawn games. Skip, do you get to play Governor Butler?
Not me, we've,
Joe's got it.
Never
Right.
missed a historical society meeting.
Thank you, Governor.
But
you'll
I'll-
have to
I'll be playing
practice your
Fanny
speech.
Butler,
You're
so-
You are
looking
kidding?
for.
Okay, good. Excellent.
Roger?
I'll move to approve the resolution as read by Cheryl Stacy.
Second.
Motion by Roger, second by Kane. Any questions or further discussion on this? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Any abstentions? And do you just want to repeat the, yes, motion passes. Do you want to repeat the date for anyone who's interested in coming from the public?
The date of the event,
June 29th, so the morning after the parade and party. And
Perfect.
we'll start gathering and playing at about 9:15
Sunday morning.
Sunday.
Do you happen to be in possession of a 24-star American flag?
Oh, you going?
No.
I wish I did.
I don't think so. We'll work on it.
Any other discussion on this? Having approved, happy to sign it. All right, that brings us right on schedule to our next item, which is Housing Trust Fund allowable uses, and Joe Camarada is here to present. Skip, yeah?
you've got the free.
Okay, can do. Yep, the nice ones.
And, because it's special paper, I brought you a ceremonial pen that.
Oh, is that why
writes.
my pen is so nice? I was like, my Selectboard notes never look this good. I'm sorry for the
I'm
2
gonna
pages
will
of
you
notes.
that pen for.
I'm sorry for the
Oh,
2
oh.
pages of notes taken in ceremonial pen. My apologies. So everyone on
Make sure
public,
that we'll send up
if you
the
were
land
on
record
public
as
forum
well.
tonight, it's in ceremonial pen, so thank you. All right, well, thank you. Let me return this to you. And, yeah, Joe, if you want to come up, thank you, Tom, for checking the chat. I will sign. Thank you all. There you go.
Skip's going to stay because he's also part of the housing task force. We spend a lot of time together, the 3 of us for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe Camarada, Waterbury Center. The topic, the first topic tonight is the allowable uses for the Waterbury Housing Trust Fund. And just as a way of background, as we were discussing the first program to come out of the Housing Trust Fund, there was a lot of discussion around was that program, the use of that program appropriate, and what was the goal of the trust fund, and was the goal of that trust fund just housing or affordable housing? So what I did is I went back and rewatched the meetings from both August and November of last year, one where the Housing Trust Fund was created, and the second where it was funded. So what you see there is a summary of that in the background section. And clearly, as the select board discussed this topic, the use of the trust fund was to increase the capacity of affordable housing. Or so I interpreted that from the minutes. So that's the first part of this, that was in the background. The next topic was, so what do we mean by affordable housing? So the second part of this document defines affordable housing in a way that it's not simply the government definition that normally is associated with low-income housing, but expands to what some people also call workforce housing, okay? And which has been a lot of discussion, again, in the spirit of the discussion of what we were trying to accomplish, that people that work in the community are able to afford to live in the community. And then the third piece of this is just a quick statement on allowable uses. And if I may, there's 2 separate P words here that I want to distinguish. One is a program, as we're going to discuss as the next part of the agenda. And then the second is a project. And a project is for a specific opportunity. So a developer may come in here It could be, for example, the Woody Avenue product, it could be Stanley Washington, it could be a developer who comes in with a private project where they're willing to make affordable housing, but that's specifically for a project. So the allowable uses are both for programs, as we'll discuss next, and also for projects. So with that introduction, let me ask if there's any questions or alterations.
We're good.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing,
May I ask a question?
sure, go ahead.
So it's about this document that's a little confusing for me because the background talks about the issue was one of the core reasons, affordable housing was one of the core reasons behind the implementation of the local option tax. So I was under the impression that the local option tax was presented to the public for paying down debt, capital expenses, economic development, community vitality, municipal investment to generate long-term savings and inefficiencies. So I'm confused by that.
That is part of the definition of community vitality that was given.
But you're saying that the issue of affordable housing was one of the core reasons behind the implementation.
It was one of
It's
the.
not what's in the charter, so.
It was.
And then I'm also confused by, as of November 18th, the town set a long-term housing goal. The town allocated. It's actually the select board.
Okay, well, I thought we could say this, like, we can change that wording and.
I'm
we
just
could have it down.
mentioning that it's confusing. Thank you.
Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason I put that in there is I looked at your presentation on for the motivation for the local option tax. So while those reasons were given there, I believe, Tom, you also specifically brought out affordable housing in that presentation.
Yes, that's correct.
It's not in the charter.
The charter itself doesn't contain any language about allowable uses for the local option tax. It merely establishes the tax.
It just talks about exactly what I just said. It doesn't, economic development, community vitality, and affordable housing is not in the charter that I found within a meeting, because it's not on our website actually.
I appreciate this, Valerie. I'm gonna let Joe continue and just ask that folks raise hands and come up, because I will just name as the chair of the select board, and it's my job to try and maintain some level of order and discipline. It's really hard when we have a lot of back and forth conversation. I know there's many folks who listen to these recordings, and it's hard to capture, so I appreciate the question. We've heard some comments. I'm certainly happy to have us as a board discuss these items. We have some additional considerations. Joe, is there anything else you want to share on this allowable uses right now? I would say, I would be curious if you could state, I'm trying to find it right now, but what the area median income is right now this year, just so that we had that context for folks as we're considering tying things to 120% of area median income and what that might mean for someone just hearing it, considering incomes in our community.
So the area median income overall is between $100,000 and $110,000. I don't have the exact number offhand, but it's between 100 and 110,000.
And is that for the entire household?
That is for the entire household, and that is both. Yeah, that is for the entire household. That is both renting and owning households.
So clarifying that the, this document in front of us notes that affordable housing would be referred as housing that is accessible to individuals earning up to 120% of the area median income, which is $100,000 to $120,000 per household per year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Roger?
I had a question about the area. Are we talking about Washington County, or Waterbury, or
We're talking about Waterbury.
Waterbury itself? Okay, thanks.
Additional questions? I see one from Sandy in the audience. Does anyone else on the board have questions? All right, Sandy, do you want to come up? Thank you.
I just have a quick question, and I am totally for the housing fund, but my question is, the town allocated $100,000, and this document says any funds not used will stay, any funds not immediately used will stay in the fund and be available for affordable housing projects. But if this was allocated into the budget and funded by local option tax, if it's not used by the end of the year, isn't it, it can't carry over, you have to have it reallocated by,
No, it carries over as fund balance.
well, I thought, when I asked you if it was at town meeting, I asked you if it was, reserved only for the housing, and you said no.
I don't recall saying that, but if the select board designated it for a purpose, it's reserved for that purpose.
Okay, so this is a reserve fund then?
Yes.
And, when did the town vote that it was okay to have a reserve fund?
The town doesn't need to vote, the select board can create a reserve in its own authority. If the town votes, it's a different type of reserve fund with a higher standard towards using it. But in essence, if the select board votes to create a reserve fund, the select board can vote to unreserve the funds also. So the $100,000 was created by the select board, the second $75,000 was created by the voters.
So it's not a dedicated fund, it's a reserve fund. I think if you read what a reserve fund is, that has to be approved by the voters.
Well, I'm speaking in general. I'm not trying to speak about financial definitions and
Well,
types of fund balance.
financial,
I'm
that's why I was
just saying
asking.
it's been reserved by the select board, is treated as that.
Okay. My understanding was that it was just an allocation by the town, it was approved by the town as an allocation, so I think that's different. So I just ask that you look into that.
Okay.
Thanks, Sandy. And I'll just note, we had questions before this meeting about the origins of this document. So Joe, you drafted this. This was reviewed at a housing trust fund. I'm also noting that the version that was posted and that I'm seeing has this nice, lovely all caps in the next one. I don't know if we're there yet. On the first page, I'll just say, again, I saw this ahead of time at the Housing Task Force, to say it's one of the core reasons I don't feel strongly about that needing to be in this document. And similarly, I think select board instead of town in the November paragraphs is fine, to reflect that. I know at that meeting, discussed the town plan process that was underway, and I think I had a motion that failed to tie it to the town plan process, which is a full town thing, we as the select board adopt, but, I'm fine with this saying select board. But, do we want to continue to the back, or? Okay. Do we have anything else we want to cover on this, Joe, or are you just asking if we have questions?
No, I think I already went through the two uses being both programs and projects, and hopefully differentiated what's meant by those two. As far as the statement in all caps, that's actually from the Housing Task Force meeting where we discussed and approved this. And what it should say is that for a program, administrative costs should not exceed 10% of the total budget.
Is there other questions or discussion on this? I'm sorry, please come up, thank you.
Harry Shepherd. Am I correct that there was $100,000 appropriation? I think that's what I kind of read in all of this. Was that a one-time thing, or is this the intent of a annual appropriation?
Good question. So background on funding, I guess just to level set generally, what is noted here, and it's reflected, was a one-time allocation from the select board out of the 2024 local option tax. That money was not anticipated and was not budgeted anywhere because we didn't think the tax would be implemented in 2024. So that 100,000 is from that. There was subsequent money included in this year town meeting budget that passed, $75,000. There was an article pertaining to local option tax, so that was specified. I would say there's been further uses of local option tax where this has been contemplated, but no standing policy and proposal has been implemented And just to say for general context, like there are cities like Montpelier that have a, every year we would like to have this much tied to a budget number or grand list. We have not spoken of anything about that. So the two funding has been the one-time 2024 and what was included in this year's town meeting budget.
And so are future contributions to this trust fund going to be annually decided at town meeting?
I believe that's the goal, yes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Roger?
Joe, when we're talking about providing funding for this program, I recollect that we talked about the potential of using the town allocation to leverage private financing or grant financing. Is that still the case?
That is still possible. It's not something that we looked at right now, although the Housing Task Force is starting to have conversations with employers around their interest in that. Yes, so there would be either opportunities for private or grant funding, but it's not something that she said, on the grant side, we're not actively pursuing it. On the private side, we're just starting discussions.
Other questions or discussion? Kane?
I guess my question is about the decision made on the committee about this document. Was there a lean one way or the other toward small scale development programs or large scale projects? As what best funding would go? What excuse me. In which direction the funding would get the most bang for its buck, essentially?
So we believe that both are important, okay? That both have a role, so both larger and mid-scale projects as well as small-scale projects. In terms of bang for the buck, it really depends upon the project. Small-scale development is, I would say, probably more expensive on a per unit basis than if someone's going to build 100 units, they can do it cheaper, right, than if someone's going to build an ADU,
Right.
But we just believe that both are necessary in part of solving the housing problem.
Other questions? I know Valerie had her hand up. Go ahead, Valerie, if you want to come in.
On the last page for the grants and loans, I thought that we were just doing the $30,000 grant and not loans. Are we now moving to loans, or am I mistaken?
Great question. I guess this is a general framing thing that I'm happy to say. So in full transparency, I advocated for the creation of this document we're looking at because I felt like before we were discussing any specific one-time program, it was important to be up a level about what in general can work at the Housing Trust Fund. So this document in front of us says that both grants and loans would be away. Our next agenda item about a specific program proposal is a grant.
Yes.
Is a proposed grant, but this would allow the possibility of either in that higher level.
And then it says all applications will be reviewed and approved by the select board. I thought we were paying Downstreet to do all the application processes, at least in the first iteration.
Again, for the specific program that's noted, I'm noting there's a bullet in the background about programs being administered by a qualified third party. I believe that's in reference to applications to use the fund for the funding, not a housing application.
Thanks.
Other questions or items on this? Again, I'll just name and own, like, was actively involved in creating this. No, the city of Montpelier has something like a 19-page document, and it felt like, that contemplates every possible scenario of this. Speaking for myself, and I'll recuse myself because I'm on the Housing Task Force on the vote, but it felt like it was important to have some foundational guidance around if we're putting money in a housing trust fund, what the types of way it could be used are, and to have some guidelines around it. So again, speaking for myself, that was that. the administrative cost was, again, because that had come up. We do now have a new housing task force member who works in the field of affordable housing development and noted that the cap was important so that that can't suddenly become 40% of a project cost that you're calling administration. That if there was relevant costs, that there should be a limit. So again, that's potentially contemplated in this too. I would say we can certainly have a vote on this particular document in any form by the select board. If the board is amenable, we can also continue on to the specific program proposal, but again, speaking for myself, it was just the question of how, at some point, having both of these formalized. Sandy?
Sorry, again, I'm for the housing task force, but I'm worried more about the fact that the legality of keeping this as a reserve fund and being able to carry that over. And I have a real concern with saying that it has to be carried over, because my understanding and that a reserve fund has to be established by the voters, and that was never done. And a reserve fund is the only fund that can be carried over. Anything appropriated has to be reappropriated by the voters if it's under budget. So, I mean, hopefully they spend every nickel, because I think it's a great thing, but if they don't, it has to be reappropriated by the voters, so.
Kane?
I'm a pretty big fan of limiting to the allowable, effectively two allowable uses for the large-scale housing development, the small-scale housing development, as laid out on this sheet. And I would be more than happy to make a motion to solidify its allowable uses as listed here.
I'll second it.
So motion by Kane, second by Roger, to approve the allowable uses for small-scale development and grants and loans for mid and large-scale development as outlined. Is there further discussion or questions on this? Roger?
Yeah, I think we should address Sandy's issue, just to get an opinion on the reserve fund, and so that we get what we think is a good legal opinion on being able to carry the funds over. If not, we may have to change our approach to it.
Other questions? Tori, anything from you online? All right, I'm seeing a thumbs up, so we'll take that as she's good. Other questions? So again, we had a motion by Kane regarding these two allowable uses. Second by Roger. I stated I'm a voting member of the Housing Task Force, so I'll abstain from that on the Select Board side. Is there further discussion or questions on this? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? And I'll abstain. So we've approved those two allowable uses, and that brings us to our next specific housing improvement program proposal as one of them.
You can still hang on, we still have one more topic.
He was making a break for it.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, the second topic is a continuation of a presentation at the April 7th Select Board meeting. And Tom, do we have that?
Yes, sir.
I distributed the entire presentation, so we had the context, but I marked the new slides with the word new. So if it's okay, I'll just focus on those slides which are new, and if there's any questions, we can go back and look at the others, okay? So then the next slide, Tom. So at the April 7th meeting, the Housing Task Force presented a proposal for the Waterbury Home Improvement Program, and it had the following recommendations. You can see them there. The result of that presentation and the subsequent discussion was a motion by Roger to adopt the recommendations 1 and 2 and recommend that the task force that they revisit the issue of tenant eligibility, and that was seconded by Tori. So here we are to revisit the issue of tenant eligibility in terms of this. And we had, so now what we're talking about here is to put it in context of what our previous. So this is a specific program for small-scale development that we're asking the select board to approve, and once it's approved, it'll be administered by a third-party administrator, in this case, Downstreet, and I'll talk a little bit more about their role, okay?
Great.
Can we scroll down then, Tom, a few slides, because the rest of, next to the one that has the nice graph in it? There we go. All right, so we look, the question around tenant eligibility is the discussion went. First thing we started to look at was what was the area median income for renters? And this is renters in Waterbury, and you see that number there is 53,000. Tooley recommended that we look at teacher salaries, and we looked at starting teacher salary and teacher's assistant. So you see the numbers are there, 46,000, 38,000. And otherwise, we looked at what I would just consider so-called Main Street businesses, right? So the businesses, we've talked a lot about them in here, who have workers there who want to live in Waterbury. So we looked at waiters and waitresses, food preparation servers, retail. We also looked at construction, because that's an important area for us. And you can see that in general, we're talking about things that are in the range of, say, $35,000 to $55,000, right, across the board for those. So that gave us some sense of what number we would target here for tenant eligibility, and I put there where those numbers came from. So if we can look at the next slide. So then the task force went back and wrote the eligibility and compliance, and we did this for two. So last time we had talked about a rent eligibility requirement, and that the monthly rent must not exceed 110% of the fair market rent for Washington County. Okay, that was part of the initial. What we had also said on that is that a property owner must submit the fully executed lease signed by both the landlord and the tenant to the town on an annual basis for verification. And that's something that we had discussed with Tom, that would be possible. So for tenant income eligibility, what the task force is recommending, so there's first of all two things, that all individuals age 21 and over residing be listed as a tenant on the lease. So when we look at a household, we're looking at all income earners and not one income earner. Then the recommendation is that the combined gross income for all such individuals must not exceed 100% of the area median income, which was 53,000. We talked about earlier. And then we give an idea where those numbers could be seen. In terms of the verification of compliance, we recommend that at the initial signing of the lease, the landlord would send this information in a redacted form to the town, and the re-verification would only be required at lease signing and not an annual renewal.
I'm sorry, Joe, we had just spoken about 110 and 120,000, and now we're saying 53. Can you just tell me where I'm going wrong on annual median income?
In general, what we had said for the housing trust fund for allowable uses was up to 120% of area. I mean, you could also think about construction, home ownership, right? So this program though is looking just at renters. Okay, so it's a specific program.
Thank you. That was the distinction. So it's the area median income for renters specifically. Is that why it's lower?
Exactly.
Thank you.
It's renters. That's the renter area median.
Question, is that cumulative for all the occupants?
It is given on a household basis, so I would say yes.
And your previous chart was per individual, right? So if you have two teachers, they're above that median and they're no longer qualified?
That's correct. That's correct. And then we had one other slide that we added. There was a discussion last time around Downstreet's role and what they, essentially if I could say, what they were doing for the administration fees, okay? So we tried to clarify that. If you think about the renter eligibility and the tenant eligibility is saying, we don't want people gaming the system. This is actually looking at protecting the town's investment in terms of the project itself, right? So what Downstreet will do is they will both select and monitor projects so that if the town allocates $30,000 to a project, they'll know within 18 months they will have a unit that's open with that. It won't be something where person goes bankrupt, they can't fulfill it, I mean, again, or it won't drag out over 5 years. So what they do is they conduct the application acceptance process over a period of 3 to 4 weeks. They prioritize those applications with the best chance of completion. They make sure the legal documents are signed. They do on-site inspections in order to make sure the work is being done before additional funds are being dispersed. They also make sure that the funds that were dispersed were actually spent in a way that's in compliance with the legal documents, which is reimbursement for existing expenses. And they continue that process up until the unit is leased. So I just wanted to kind of give an overview of their role as the administrator for this process. And I don't think that anything else is new. Everything else was what we discussed previously.
It looks like Roger and then King in terms of questions.
Getting to Dan's question, is there any eligibility factored in if you have a 2-unit or 2-bedroom unit, and then you could have like 2 wage earners versus a smaller single, like a studio or single bedroom unit?
I mean, there's not on the tenant eligibility side. On the leasing, on the rental eligibility, yes, we had a higher rent for 2 bedrooms than for 1 bedroom, but we did not make that distinction on tenant eligibility.
King?
I was gonna say that after our last discussion about this, I was actually gonna say that I was satisfied with the changes that the committee had made in reference to my critiques about the initial presentation. But Roger does make a good point about a 2-bedroom. Is there anything in, as far as you know, in Downstreet's program and other areas about 2-bedroom apartments as far as programs like this are concerned?
I don't know about Downstreet. I do know that in the state VHIP program, there is no distinction.
Got it.
Can you speak to the state VHIP program in terms of its funding status from the legislature and if it's being continued, that this is modeled off of?
So I have also been waiting to see I read what was done, what was put out last week. I didn't see it. My understanding, and I understand this from talking to Teresa Wood, is that there is funding to continue the VHIP program this year. That was in the budget.
And just to be clear, that was required. If that is the case, Downstreet will be administering this program on behalf of the state and then could also administer this more specialized version for Waterbury.
Yep.
Other questions on this? Yep, Billy,
So,
do you want to come up? I am going to
Oh,
do the thing, it's for the
Sorry,
Zoom,
sorry,
if
sorry,
nothing
sorry.
else, appreciate it.
For the record, Billy Bigdor. First of all, I've been attending Housing Task Force meetings, and I think these guys are doing a great job. And I have to say, I feel like I've been heard, because I know shut up. So. But I did have a question about the project selection box. Is this going to be the only, it says prioritize applications with the best chance of completion. is this gonna be the only thing that Down Street gets to look at? And the reason why I ask is because I like the fact that there's a particular period of time where you have a number of applications and you can high grade,
Right.
pick the best ones. I guess the question is this gonna be the only criteria? Or will the select board be fleshing that out more?
So the second part of your question is no to the select board fleshing it out. This is why we're here today to present this, because once the program starts, the application process will run entirely through Down Street. Okay? I don't understand, when you say this is the only, so they're gonna open the period for 3 to 4 weeks, they're gonna collect applications. I think Sandy could probably speak a little bit more as to the information that Down Street asks. It's more than just an application they're asking for.
Yeah, so you have to be able to complete the project within 18 months. So you have to have the capability to be able to do that by what you're looking at, that plans and show where you're funding, because they're not, the 50,000 will not cover what you're, So they want to see where your funding is coming from, but the big thing is whether or not your particular your project can be completed, because there is a deadline of 18 months. So they prioritize ones that are closer to completion, so they know that they can get people in quicker. So if you've got nothing started and, the funding, you have to go for a loan, so it could be, they're gonna take somebody who's, like in my case, I was already probably about 40% done when I applied. So, I think that's why I got through quickly, otherwise it probably would not have gone through because of all the work that it ended up taking.
So one of the things I noticed about the VHIP program is that while they allocate money and they run out of money, they don't know whether that expenditure actually makes a difference. They just know they've given somebody money. So I could build something, and I might not need the money, but I'll apply, I'll get the 30,000, and the house would have been built anyway. And so what I was hoping there would be a way to do is, at least when we have a quasi-competitive process, let Down Street look at which ones are the best bang for the buck. The idea is if they feel one is, two projects are equally likely to be completed, but one, we're actually making a difference because of our 30,000, as opposed to somebody who might not need it anyway. Why not go for the one that's needed as opposed to one that would get built anyway?
But that's why we were so clear on the allowable uses, right? It's not just about increasing housing capacity, it's about increasing affordable housing capacity. So Bill and Joe both have 2 projects, right, and they're both in 18 months, and I can give money to one, right, and I can get affordable housing for that, as long as they're equal projects, doesn't matter.
So what I would say is one of those projects would have happened anyway, but one of the projects might not have happened.
But it may have happened anyway, but not affordable housing as part of it. They may have just happened, they may have been short-term rentals, right, they may have been market rate long-term rentals.
You can't, it has to be it has to stay, like it's on my deed. So, and if I break that, then I owe the money back in the next 10 years.
Right, I understand that.
So the person, it may be somebody that can afford it. Well, in most cases, it has to be because it's expensive and you have to be able to come up with the money, and not everybody can do that. But the thing that helps Down Street is that they're creating affordable housing, because in my case, I can't charge more than, the retail for a long time, and that's costing me a lot of money because I'm just putting in a 1-bedroom and I get $900, where I'm pretty sure in Waterbury I could get a lot more than that. So they're giving me the money, but I'm giving them something for the next 10 years too. So that's why not and maybe somebody that has the money can do it, but they're still gonna give somebody housing that at a lower rate.
So I know it might be against the rules, but do you guys think that all of these projects would not go forward without 30,000 or the VHIP funding? That it'd either be a project that would not be affordable or wouldn't get built at all?
I wouldn't have done it probably without. I wouldn't have done it.
Well, that would
I could, actually, if I was to do it again, I wouldn't do it, because the 50,000 is not worth what I'm giving up to rent it for the next 10 years. It's really not worth it. It's just that it's a friend that's, but other than that, it's 50,000 is nothing when you look at the loss of rent revenue, because I could, and same thing with the short term, you could get a lot more money than, and so that's what.
Just to speak to your point, Billy, which I think is really compelling, and I will say something I've thought about. $30,000 is not an insignificant amount of money from local options tax. So I just want to say, like, speaking for myself, that's not a small thing we're tossing around. And I said, for me, it just has to pencil. Should we just be subsidizing rent directly? If we, the select board, determines that we're so worried about affordability in Waterbury, should we just buy down people's rent? Just to name, like, I did that back. So $30,000. To be honest, it's $500 a month for 5 years, and given the discrepancy between, you know, Sandy just gave an example of 1 bedroom for $900 and 1 bedrooms I know of for $1,400, arguably we could take $30,000, just directly subsidize market rent to the amount of affordability we're requiring through this program. I will name another important distinction of this program. It is creating a new housing unit, so there is a specific requirement that this needs to be bringing a new unit of housing online. So in terms of expanding supply and then guaranteeing that the supply is rented at an affordable rate. And I will name, like, I think it's a really good question around this 2-income thing. It's certainly something I think about when I think of peers, but I will say one of the discussions with the Housing Task Force is this a subset of who we could serve through this particular program. We have programs like Down Street's own units that are for 30 to 80% of area median income, way below. We have folks who can afford to rent in the market, and really thinking about how can we serve those folks in the middle who we want in our community, who are working some of these jobs but really are priced out of market rent. So again, just speaking for myself in terms of my own calculus, personally, I'm worried we're not going to have anyone take us up on this project. I will just name, we have constraints doing this municipally as opposed to other. I mean, $30,000, they're saying that average projects are like $38,000. That was from about 3 years ago. The projects in total are offering about $100,000 to do an accessory dwelling unit. We're only able to offer a grant, not a loan, so folks who receive this also will have tax implications, because it is actually considered income that the town is subsidizing your creation of this affordable for 5 years unit. So I'll just name, personally, my fear is that we will have no uptake. We picked this program because it was modeled on an existing program in the state that had success, that had more applicants than they were able to fund in Waterbury, but that state program had more flexibility and had more availability. You can do a 10-year forgivable loan, requires a broker license, Downstreet can administer it. You know, just to say, we tried to look into how to make it a win-win for the town, and this was the best we could get given the specs from my perspective, but that's my 2 cents on the calculus, just to give it to you. Kane, you have a hand up?
Yeah, and more of your point, there's not, you know, this is, I think, after all of the discussion and everything that the Housing Task Force has done, and the about a year worth of work that we put in to get here, I think this is the best we got, and this is better than I thought we would be, where we would be at this point. So I'm more than happy to move to adopt the recommendations presented to us today, because I don't think stalling this program any longer with the guardrails we have just set up is going to do us any good.
I'll second it for the purpose of that's a motion.
Okay. So Kane had a motion around that third recommendation, that the $100,000 be used for the Waterbury program. I'm just looking at the language around the state and BHIP.
We haven't gone through all of the slides, right?
No, Joe just did a presentation of certain new slides for this document, but I just wanted Kane can use. So Cheryl, what do we have for Kane's motion? I want to make sure we have something.
To adopt the third recommendation,
Is
unless
that
you want to
correct,
include,
Kane?
because stalling isn't doing any good.
Is that good, Kane?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can include the follow-up language too, for the record.
It's in the comments, so.
Okay. So we had that motion by Kane and a second by Roger, and then discussion. Select board members, any questions?
Well, I'll just make a comment. I mean, I share your concern about the uptake on this. It's, fairly specific, and it does lock the developer into a set of circumstances which they may find challenging. But I think it's well worth the try to see what we get.
Now it's way brighter here.
I am, so
Not the first one.
with regards to the state program, and while I understand the concerns around being less money, and I see that, but I would also say that we took steps to make the renting of the property easier for the landlord than is for the state program. So the monthly rent is higher, and that in itself offsets some of the difference between us and the state program, as well as the types of people who are eligible. Those restrictions have been loosened, so we're trying to offset it. But again, I think Alyssa's point is correct, that we base this on a program that the state was successful. They put out this at the end of 2023, and that was 18 months ago, and a hell of a lot changed in 18 months. Okay? I do want to just come back to the dual income piece again, right? Because I want to give you a sense for what, if indeed we're saying that you could have two people that are each making $50,000 rent a two-bedroom. What that means is that what you lose is that maybe a couple that's a teacher, right, and has a spouse and they have a child that would rent a two-bedroom, that they would displace that. And I think what we wanted to do was give preference to the families that made less than the area median income, and not necessarily just the individuals.
Questions? I had Chris and Valerie both in hands up.
Yeah, I just have a simple question. Nobody makes use of these monies the next couple of years. Is there a sunset clause or something that, does this thing just go away on its own, or how's that happen? That's a question.
Good question around sunset clause or where this goes. I will name Roger said we want to look into the specifics around the municipal accounting. I will say this motion King has made is just around this $100,000. So if and when that would be used up, we would have to be back here to decide what to do next. If it's not used after a certain amount of time, I think my guess is we would want to revisit it and say, what's working? Should we use something else? We tried this, it didn't work. Now what? Speaking for myself. Roger?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're not going to just okay this and walk away. I think this will continue to receive a certain amount of scrutiny by the select board and others in the community, and that will determine how well it's working and work with the task force to try to get it to its best and maximum use.
Valerie?
I just had a question on the slide, eligibility and compliance slide, and I must have missed that. It says under the tenant income eligibility requirement, to verify compliance, and the last sentence says, this verification of the W-2 by the tenant is required only at lease signing and it's not subject to annual renewal. I was just wondering why.
In general, the task force wants to avoid people being kicked out of their home based on where they work or how much they make, right? So let's say that you had someone who was in there, maybe they got a promotion, maybe they just had a really good year where they got a bonus so their income went out. Are you gonna tell them they need to move out and find another, so that's.
It's a safeguard to make sure the tenant can stay there based upon their initial income.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
It's a safeguard to
Yes.
make sure that the tenant can stay in the ADU
Yes.
regardless of a
Right.
potential increase in salary.
Correct.
Interesting. The program administration inspections, approximately $1,000. So who inspects them? I'm only asking that because I'm hoping that if we pay someone $1,000, you can pick somebody in our community and not someone from Montpelier or Barry. So that money can stay in Waterbury if possible.
That's a good point. So some of the inspections are actually done by by Downstreet themselves, but they do have, in the case of electricians and plumbing, they do have outside inspectors who come in.
So could we think about maybe trying to offer that to an inspector within our community?
Certainly, we could discuss it with Downstreet.
I mean, does that sound reasonable? I'm just trying to keep as much money as I can of our local option tax in our community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to, like Roger, address Chris's concerns. As someone on the select board who has pushed this very specific agenda for a very long time, I will be the first to scrutinize if it fails. I don't want to keep throwing spaghetti at the wall if it's not sticking. You know, it's always perfectly good spaghetti. So I'm going to be watching this program very closely. And should it not be successful, I'll be the first one to point it out.
Other questions or comments on this? I'm Terry Harry, right behind Roger's head.
Will we prove its success before we propose allocating more money?
Harry's question is, will we prove the success before allocating more money? Speaking for myself, yes. The goal is, again, like I said, I'm not optimistic we will have any uptake. So personally, if we have some uptake, that will be cause for further examination. Other questions? Right. Other discussion. So just noting, we do anticipate there is money in the budget. As of now, it is not up and running. So this could just be implemented as a Waterbury program. But I'm just reviewing the language around the state refunding VHIP and the Waterbury program, noting that, again, the state and Waterbury are operating different programs.
Yes.
Similar framework, but have different criteria. All right, is there further discussion? Tom?
Just one quick question, Joe. If, let's say we have just a handful of applications, and none come to fruition as a couple of people on the board fear, are we still responsible to pay Downstreet the admin fee, or do we pay that when we get to a signed application where the unit's being built? Or are you just not that far along yet?
I'd have to ask Downstreet.
My final comment, I guess, will be a little bit cheeky and say that our acronym is better.
Sorry, so our acronym is better, noted. Other question? I'm Sandy.
Yeah, sorry. It said right in the first paragraph that admin fee covers us, but it says payable in full at the time of the application we would pay for funding, so it kind of leads me to believe that.
Thank you, Sandy. Other questions on this? All right, we had a motion by Kane, a second by Roger. Any further discussion? I'll, as with the previous item, abstain as I was on the housing task force. Tori, you online, you good?
All good, yep, here.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? I'll abstain. All right, with 3 votes, that passes, so we will move forward with the first phase of that.
Thank you, Joe.
Yes, thank you to Joe Camerata, who, if it wasn't apparent from his extensive presentation at now multiple meetings, has put an enormous amount of time, energy, and expertise into making this a reality. So let this be a public thanks and acknowledgement of Joe and all of his leadership on the Housing Task Force. Thank you, Joe. All right. With that, we are on to ethics, investigation, and enforcement ordinance. We looked at this previously, and I believe we have an updated version that Tom has prepared.
Final version, I believe.
Any specific things to speak to, Tom?
No, I think we've gone over this a few times.
Okay. So this is codifying what we discussed previously at other meetings, giving the definitions. We get it on 3 pages. And it's just adopting the process that aligns with the other policies. Any questions or motions on this? Okay.
move to adopt the Essex and, the Code of Ethics Investigation and Enforcement Ordinance for the town of Waterbury.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Kane, second by Roger. Is there further discussion?
This may not be exactly related, but I was wondering, there was some effort on the part of VLCT to create a ethics training program. Do you know the status of that?
Yep, I can get that all to you. Sure.
Is that, do you happen to know if that's something that we do together, or you would be something
It's just
that we do?
just an online training, so we can do it all together, we can do it individually, it's up to you.
All right. Perhaps a parking lot item is review of when folks have completed the required training and for the other boards it might apply to. Other questions or comments on this? All right, motion by Kane, second by Roger. Any other questions, discussion? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, this is adopted. I'm happy to have my copy be signed.
Thank you.
June 2025.
I use the honorary pen or should I-
Oh, this is my work pen now. Thank you. I think I gave Skip his back. Yeah, I handed it to him. But there, it's more pens, always
I got
enough.
no.
We're good. All right. That brings us to our next item, which is to re-adopt the local emergency management plan. Let's see, the plan was posted online. My understanding is this is our annual re-adoption. Tom, do you have anything to add on this?
Annual readoption, I've just learned there's also we adopt a long form emergency management plan, there's also a short form, so we can take the long form and translate that and have that in front of us at a future meeting. And I think going forward then, we can just do the short form emergency management plan.
You can probably stop sharing for that. Anyone have questions on this? I will note in general, I know. What?
I was gonna say something, but go ahead.
Oh, I was just that I know Danny Coleman, who's now involved with the Natural Disaster
Yeah,
Preparedness Committee, mentioned maybe like doing updates. So I'll just say, speaking for myself, I think it makes sense to re-adopt this for making sure we're up to date for any grants, which has been a problem in the past. But that we may want to review it sooner than a year in terms of if there's any updates.
And we can do that with the short form, I think, as part of it. I just have a couple edits here, because we got this out late Friday, and staff didn't really have a full chance to review it, but just a couple little things. If you look at fourth page in enclosure 1.1, which is the chart with contact information. I just want to note a couple changes from here. Up at the top, Gary Dillon doesn't have a home phone, so we'll delete that. I'd like to add Danny Kelman as a natural disaster response coordinator to the local emergency management team and put her contact information there. A little further down, under Waterbury ambulance, for some reason Maggie Burke, the Burke part did not show. Every year this is a matter of updating the table. And then on the vice chair part, we put Kane, but we have his email address, so we'll just update that. And then the only other tweak is on the very last page of the document. Under overnight shelters, it says Thatcher Brook Primary School, and then Gary Dillon pointed out that should be Brookside.
You also have my phone number wrong.
Okay, so we'll get that.
The 203.
7924.
Correct.
And that's all I had after we all took a look today.
And substantially, there's no significant change from previous years.
From year to year now.
I'll move to approve the local emergency management plan for 2025.
Second.
Motion by Roger, second by Kane. Any further discussion or questions on this, Kane?
I just wanted to tack on the amendment that will fix the typos, so.
Accepted.
With updates. Any further discussion on this? And again, just noting, we'll likely revisit a short form in short order as well. Any other questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right, thumbs up from Tori, so approved with all in support. All right, that brings us to Select Board and Municipal Manager informational updates. Again, as a reminder, this is not to do additional discussion, but just to share informational updates on things that are relevant from our respective board and committee liaison roles, or generally for Tom as Municipal Manager. And again, we will schedule, I will note here, this is a 3-meeting month, so based on our new policy, as there are 5 Mondays in the month of June, we will plan to meet both on the 16th and on the 30th. But anyone excited to kick off Select Board updates?
Sure.
Roger?
We had what most consider a successful community volunteer fair on May 17th. And we had planned to do a panel discussion at the end of that, but because we had many volunteers still signing up as we concluded, we decided to postpone it, and that's now scheduled for this Thursday right here at 7 o'clock. It will also be online for anyone who wants to join. And you can go to Revitalizing Waterbury if you want to join in on that, or just show up here. It's open to the public. And then on the rec committee, they continue to look at plans for a proposed field house. They're also going out to see if they can connect with other committees and initiatives to get a more comprehensive look at proposals around trail development in and around Waterbury. So that would be both bike trails and hiking trails. And so they're going to try to get a more comprehensive look at recreational pathways.
Thanks, Roger. Kate?
I'll go next. Our new natural disaster preparedness coordinator has scheduled some volunteer training. Draft outline for volunteer training. It was a big email. And we should have another meeting the 3rd week of this month to flesh it out. But it's looking like June 25th to begin training volunteers. I'm sure we'll put some more word out. I'll talk to Danny about it. But tentatively June 25th, 6 p.m. And the pavilion at Deck Row. And the follow-up, I did that whole police research thing. Tom followed up again this week via email that my numbers were accurate. But I did see the presence of a bunch of Washington County sheriffs this week, which I was curious about.
It's in anticipated agenda items for next week. Though it should say the 16th. Typo in their agenda.
I just wanted to add that I was driving around with a buddy, and I think we saw 3 or 4 of them, and he looked at me and said, "You did this."
Thank you. Skipping over to Zoom, I believe Tori said via chat that she doesn't have any updates.
Yeah, all set. I will say I am working on the event permit, hoping to have it to you as like a draft for everybody for next agenda, or, next meeting, hopefully.
Thanks, Tori. Tangential, I went to the tree planting over Memorial Day for Steve, so there's a lovely tree with a plaque that was designed locally with a rock someone found, and Jane Brown got the plaque engraved by someone else she knew, and our current tree warden, Mike Luciavo, donated the trees. So just to say a nice example of community memorial out behind the library. For anyone interested, in memory of Steve Lott's speech. I was at the Housing Task Force meeting, we've reviewed a lot of that content, and then Tom and I have an upcoming meeting on Thursday morning with members of the Conservation Commission to talk about some management and just the role and scope generally. I know Mike Bart is our liaison for that, who is not here tonight. But I think that concludes my updates. We did also get nice envelopes from VLCT. I don't know who mentioned, you mentioned trainings from VLCT. And I'll just note they gave a hello and welcome packet, introductory. One, I know mine went to my house. I don't know if others came here to the municipal office. I saw one.
here for the.
No, mine went to my house.
Great. So just to say, it has the login to the online portal and all of the resources we can access. So that, and a nice note from Ted Brady. Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
A couple things, last one on the capital side, on the pool, last week, the new coating in the shallow end was put in, which was exciting. And will be up and open soon enough as per the normal schedule. Newland Flats has gotten a bunch of complaints about Newland Flats, that'll be paved, June 17th and 19th, weather permitting.
Will it be completed the 17th?
Began the 17th.
Oh,
Completed the 19th.
Okay.
Tom, what was the date again?
June 17th is the start date for repaving.
I just had a guy written into me outside about it.
I've had a few, they milled off 2 inches of the road, but the road is
Sure
essentially
did.
down to the base. But the last time we had that road done, 3 inches were put on there, and so it was a bit of a surprise.
Somebody stole some inches of road
I'm not
from
quite
us?
sure what happened. The good news is we had 600 yards of good material that went mostly on Perry Hill and some on the curve were on Ripley there.
Every time it rains, the potholes get worse, and I have to drive basically the whole length of it several times a day.
No reason for.
Do you drive faster or slower because of it?
Much slower,
Okay.
because you have to like slalom.
You do, there are sections where you have to go to the total opposite side of the road and come back.
Is this, just a question, is this gonna conflict at all with the road closures on the 16th?
No, and in fact, it shouldn't, because
Other half the time.
if you're going up that way, you're going up that way, whether you're coming from the Perry Hill side or whether you're coming from Route 100. Yeah, it won't be pleasant for a few weeks here, that's summer construction season.
Yeah, I guess if the bridge is closed.
The bridge is closed, I mean, just,
And then
they're gonna
Newland's
pave one
closed.
side and then the other, so traffic will be able to pass through?
I believe so, that's typical, but.
Because if
don't
we
quote me,
block
that's just-
both,
You'll have to.
both Perry
you'll have to
Hill
take Shaw
and Newland
Mansion.
Flats,
You'll have to.
we will hear about it,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, the good news, most of the
Can you
material from
imagine?
Newland Flats is on Perry Hill now, so that'll help us.
I can only imagine having to traverse from the bottom of this side of Perry Hill all the way across Shaw Mansion.
Yeah, go up the little, and then come down the little hill,
Yeah.
yeah.
March over to Perry Hill until you give me my road back.
Other news, continuing to work on the hazard mitigation grant with Randall Meadow, that should all be finalized into the state by June 20th. I've had a couple meetings with Vermont Emergency Management and our consultant. The budget has, when I initially presented it, was a little under $3.5 million. We're now at 3.85. So it's grown a bit, and part of that is actually good because part of my complaint in talking with my consultant and with the state is that there's always pretty substantial cost loss for the town, things like legal fees, some unanticipated bills that always add up, and I didn't want to be holding the bag, so I wanted to have a budget for that. But the other piece is that the funding will pay for damages that are caused as a result of it. And so I argued that Park Row and the portion of State Drive where you go into the cornfield is likely going to get pretty well trashed by all the heavy trucks going over it. And so we're going to include in that repaving of that when it's all done. So the budget went up about $300,000 over the last 2 weeks. But the good news is the state fully intends to cover our 25% local match.
Oh, there we go.
So as it stands right now, if this is all paid for, I do want to say that challenge with these projects is there's a few challenges. One is you're estimating, And we're estimating, and the biggest cost is of course removing all the fill, and we're assuming that can go somewhere reasonably local. You never quite know. The consultant's done a number of these projects before, so we think some numbers are very reasonable, but it's an estimate, and then of course if you get funding, you're 2 years away from actually doing the work, and who knows what inflation will be. So I don't profess to say that this will be fully paid for. There will likely be some town cost, and will likely be a few $100,000 in the end, because that's how these projects typically get completed. But nonetheless, getting our 25% share covered, at least for now, is I think pretty great news. Don't have any results of the initial environmental testing, but we'll have that in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Tom. Any other questions or updates for folks?
I was wondering about Mike Hedges' concern about the weed whacking of this chervil.
Yeah, our Celia has all the training, I know, related to the invasive species, and she does try to balance all that. So I can speak about the schedule and see what's planned for. I'm aware of the chervil, I'm aware of the poison parsnip, and we've had some of that when we've ditched, that Chris may be aware of too. So I think Celia's really on top of it all, but some of it just boils down to, do we have the staff and the time, and what other things happen?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll speak to Mike Hedges' point there a little bit, because I've been chasing this stuff off, like trying to chase it off my property for some time. The fishermen's across the road from mine, their fields are completely decimated by it. After a couple of years of trying to weed whack it and then trying to eliminate it, because I was told if you cut it enough times it'll die, well, that's not the case. If you cut it just before it goes to seed, it won't flower again. If you try to cut it early in the spring, it'll just keep flowering, keep popping up and flowering and flowering and flowering and trying to go to seed. But if you wait till it just before it goes to seed, or it actually starts to create the little green pods, you whack it then, it won't flower again for the rest of the year. The plant produces hundreds of seedlings. The problem with that is, especially in the town ditchways, that's been my problem, is when it goes to seed, the water carries those seeds down the ditches, and then one of the ditches happens to exit, goes across my fields.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep it at bay. I'm seeing some results, I think, in fact, I've been anticipating getting ready for chasing it again. I'll pull it out by hand. The chervil doesn't damage, the oil doesn't damage your hands. I pull it out by hand all the time where I can, because that's the only way to really prevent it from coming back.
Well,
It's almost got like a carrot
root out.
It's almost got like a carrot root in it, you know, it's difficult to pull, but with the wet weather we've had, we work it a few times to pop it out. You go up on Ripley Road or up on Sweet Road right now, you'll see it laying in the road, everybody's trying to do the same thing. But that's how I've learned to keep it at bay, and I've convinced Ari Fishman to keep on top of it over there, because he's got so much of it that it could contaminate my hay fields pretty easily. So it's nasty. It grows in the most difficult places to get to. So it's almost like it's doing it on purpose, because it knows that you can't get to it. I call it the devil weed.
Thanks,
But,
Chris.
It's nasty stuff.
That's why I asked Mike to describe it, because I don't know about you, but you go driving these days and you see the white flowers everywhere in a density that does seem quite indicative of invasive, so.
I'll link to photos in a minute.
Oh, great, Cheryl's gonna link to photos in a minute, she said, so, thank you. Awesome, any other updates? Yeah, Val.
I was looking for an update on the advertising for the liaison, ethics liaison from 2 weeks ago. No advertisement?
Not yet.
Thanks. Other questions? All right. We have a lot of executive session, which is part of the timing for the meeting today. So I will say I'm aware of litigation, attorney-client communication, labor relations, and evaluation of a public employee.
some of which need a finding that premature public knowledge.
Can I find that all of those things?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we gonna do anything about the next meeting?
Oh, I'm
agenda,
so
or-
sorry, I skipped ahead, sorry, I was getting so busy consulting my thing that I was out of order, thank you, Roger. Sorry, our next agenda item that we're on now is review next meeting agenda. I have a note that I will hopefully look at to put LOT policy in the parking lot, or it could be on the next meeting agenda, but what suggestions do folks have for next meeting agenda?
Well, we got one already written down, which is the Washington County Sheriff and Vermont State Police
Yep,
contract statistics.
thank you, and yes, that is scheduled, per your point, if you wanna review any of the other policing in more detail.
Yeah, I did all the, I procrastinated and then I did all the work in one day and now I realized that I had a couple more weeks.
It's nice to have something done
Yeah.
ahead of time.
We also had questions about the statistics from the state police, so an update on those.
That's true.
I had penciled in as well. Other items, we said short form of the local emergency management plan.
Oh, something I got asked about, which I'm sure can be easily answered at our next meeting, is and I'm sure it's in my notes somewhere from the last year, is a list of paving projects.
Yep, capital plan, we're working on that internally.
Okay.
And my former employer, PH International, had a proposal that they wanted us to consider. I passed it on to Tom.
Yep, yep.
I may need to recuse myself on that, but just the messenger.
Sounds good, can add that, thank you. Tori had mentioned parade and event permit, so I have that penciled in. Tom, you had mentioned capital plan, do you think 2 weeks is too soon, or?
I think we can be there in 2 weeks. It'd be nice to have other department heads there,
Mm-hmm.
but let's plan on it.
Okay, so we'll plan for the 16th, and if not, reschedule for the 30th? You mean we wanted to wait until it was June and the end of school and then invite all of the department heads? Sounds good. And I put construction update just because we'll actually be underway, so if there's anything pressing for folks. Any other?
How about the other two housing projects that are underway? We had a public discussion of the Stanley Wasson property a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And then the Woody Avenue project. I've heard bits and pieces, but maybe we should revisit and see where we're at with both of those.
Awesome, thank you. Tori, anything besides parade and event permit you'd hope for on the agenda?
No, all set, thank you.
Yep, thanks. All right. I think that seems like an ample amount. Thank you, Roger, for keeping me on track. All right, now, any other agenda items? Okay.
Okay, so it's labor,
Labor relations, attorney-client communications.
client, and personnel?
And attorney-client communications.
Okay, I've got labor, attorney-client, and real estate?
Yep. Which doesn't need the premature one. And then a public evaluation of a public employee.
Personnel. Okay. I move to find, this is gonna be the longest one I've ever done, I think. I move to find that premature public knowledge of labor relations agreements, attorney-client privilege, real estate transaction, and personnel discussion would place the town of Waterbury at a substantial disadvantage.
I'll second it.
Motion by Kane, second by Roger. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes.
I move to enter executive session and invite the municipal manager.
I'll second it.
Motion by Kane, second by Roger. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we're in executive session.